Got a 2004 Honda Element in here with the K24 2.4 engine. We're going to adjust the valves on it. It's got over 200,000 miles on it, and I don't believe it's ever had the valves adjusted. This is actually my mom's car for a long time, and then she ended up getting the new car, and I kind of inherited it as a shop car. And I've driven it probably 30 or 40,000 miles since I've had it. So it's got well over 200 on it, and it doesn't have any codes or anything, but it's starting to exhibit what I think is a valve issue where it kind of vibrates a little bit or idles a little bit rough, especially when it's cold, and then when it gets warmed up, it kind of evens out. And it's not real noticeable. It's getting a little bit worse as we go, but that's pretty typical valve issue, or valves being out of adjustment is kind of an odd idle. It's more noticeable in the summer just because with the AC on. Normally on these Hondas, the valves go tight, especially the exhaust valve. The intake goes tight too. Both of them will go tight. So what I'm expecting to see is the valves being tight on it, and once we get it adjusted, it should smooth out. Like I said, if I turn it on and idle it, you really can't tell there's anything wrong with it. You put it in gear, and you get a little bit of vibration out of it. So other than that, it's not really showing any other signs of valve misadjustment. Sometimes you can get misfires and things like that in these Hondas, multi-cylinder misfires, if the valves get too out of adjustment. But it's not doing that yet. So anyway, it's well past due for it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this shield off here and then start taking off this valve cover. And we'll get down to where we need to be to take the valves, to adjust the valves. So the first thing I do is just take off this little cover here. I'm going to try to get this done somewhat quickly. I got a couple of them coming in on tow trucks. Well, I got one coming on a tow truck and one being driven in, so need to get this done in a reasonable amount of time. You're just going to go around the valve cover and take out all these little bolts, or nuts, I should say. Yeah, like I said, I drive this car quite a bit. It's my main car that I drive. And it's just kind of started last winter, I guess. When it's cold, it idles pretty rough. Not really rough, it just kind of vibrates the dashboard and stuff a little bit. It's not like misfiring or anything. It's just not as smooth as it was. And I'm about probably 95% sure it's never had the valves adjusted on it. Since it's been made. My mom got it. I think it had right at 100,000 on it, and I don't believe it was adjusted before she got it. So, yep. Definitely past due. You know, my mom should have had it adjusted for me before she gave it to me. It's kind of rude of her to sell a car or give me a car she didn't maintain, but what do you gotta do? Come on. So now we're just gonna take out the coil packs. Those are all 10 mil, and just push in on the clips. The wiring should come out, and then you have 10 mil holding them in. That one was missing a bolt, so that's why I didn't take it out. So just go through and unclip all those, and then we'll have this hose to get off. I have to go through. I don't think there's much else left to hook up to the valve cover here. Alright, so I just went ahead and moved the wiring harness out of the way. We have this clip here for this hose. And you have 2 10s here for these lines that go to the back of the engine. Would help if I was going the right way. I believe that's it for the valve cover. I've had these engines apart quite a bit, but sometimes you forget. I'm going to go through and just pop these out real quick, and then the valve cover should pop off. Alrighty, so once we get all that off, the valve cover should just slide right off without a whole lot of trouble. You may have to move this over a little bit. It's really the only thing that kind of gets in the way. So, this engine is pretty clean. I change the oil about every 4,000 miles on it or so it's still in really good shape, good clean. It runs great. I really like these engines. So anyway, we'll start adjusting the valves now, get down to it. Alright, next thing I did was take the front wheel off and jack it up. The reason I want to do that is I want to get into that. There's an access hole right there in the fender well. Put a 19mm socket through there. That way you can hand turn over the engine. I got a long ratchet on there. And what you're looking for is this arrow to be going up. There's a mark over here that's up. And then there's a mark. There's a slash right here on this pulley. And there's a mark on this pulley. And those all should line up. These should both be up. And then these two here should be lined up. And that should be top dead center in your piston, #1 piston. So that we can adjust the valves. And I will put a picture on the screen and show you more clearly. I know it's kind of hard to see what's going on here with that, but you're going to look for the marks. There's an arrow up on this one. There's a mark. There's a little dot on this one, and then there's 2 marks on each one of these. You're going to want to line all those up so that you know you're on #1 top dead center. And like I said, I'll put a picture of it that's in the service manual so you can see for yourself on it. Alright, so what we're doing here is we're going to get a feeler cage and we're going to get underneath those valves where the rocker and the valve meet. And right now, on the intake side, you want 8 to 10 thousandths of an inch. Now, if you don't know which way is the intake, your intake manifold here, so this is going to be your intake camshaft. Your exhaust is on that side, the back side, so that's going to be your exhaust cam. And what I like to do is set these up a little bit on the loose side, so because they always tighten up on Hondas. So if it's 8 to 10 thousandths of an inch, I just go to 10 thousandths. That way, you know, if you don't adjust, if it takes you longer to adjust them, it's a little bit better because they always tighten up. So I'm going to put a 10 in there, and I can get it in there, but it's pretty tight. So I'm going to loosen just a hair. And just for an example, I'll show you it's 13 thousandths on the high side. Sorry, I had to go double check. It's 11 to 13 thousandths on the exhaust valve. And I'm going to almost guarantee that I won't be able to get this feeler gauge, that 13 thousandths. I can almost guarantee you that I will not be able to get that in the valves. These Hondas are notorious for exhaust valves being tightening up over time. And there's absolutely no way to get the 13 thousandths in there. Alright, so kind of what I figured. This thing needs to be adjusted. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the intake a little bit. There, I can get the feeler gauge in there on the high side, but it's pretty draggy. What you want to do is, so I'm going to go back to my 10 thousandths here. So what you want to do is put your 10 thousandths in between where the valve stem is and the rocker. You want to get it in there, and you should be able to put this in there and feel a slight amount of drag. You should be able to push this back and forth and feel a slight amount of drag on it. If it's real grabby, like if it doesn't want to go in there, then it's too tight. If you can get it in there and it's real loose, then it's too loose, obviously. What you want to do is put it in there and kind of go back and forth, and it should just be like a little bit of drag and feel pretty smooth. This one here, I can barely get it in, and when I pull it back and forth, it's real scratchy, like it grabs and let go, grab and let go, so it's a little bit tight. I'm not going to go too crazy on the intake, it's pretty close, but on the exhaust, we're definitely way off. It's tight. I can't even get the gauge in there. Now I am going on the high side, and I'll let you know. Anyway, I'm trying to get ahead of myself here. So what you do to adjust these is you loosen this 10mm nut here, and you'll see there's a flathead slot on the top for a flathead screwdriver. Now, they do sell special tools like this. This is an all-in-one tool. It's basically just a 10mm with a, you can see that in the middle, it's got the flathead. And this just goes down on there, and you're able to loosen it and adjust it that way. These work pretty good. The only problem with these, especially on the V6 Hondas, you can't get them into a lot of the places you need to get them into. There's just not enough clearance, so you end up going back to a small 10mm wrench and a flathead. On this engine here, with being a 4-cylinder and there's more area, open area, I'll probably be able to use this tool on the whole job. Like I said, these aren't necessary. You don't have to get this tool, but it does make it a little bit easier if you're doing the job. So all you do, regardless of what tools you have, you put the 10mm over the nut, and then on this, you just crank it until it's loose. And you just loosen it up a hair, and then you just back out or turn in the valve or the adjuster on it to where you need it, to where it'll slide easily. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust this first one real quick, and then we'll go to the back. Alright, so I got the tool on there. I'm just going to take it and loosen this 10 first. And the one thing I didn't talk about, I like to use these angled feeler gauges. They got kind of an angle on the end. It's a little bit easier on these Hondas. They're usually kind of in a tight area. You're just going to stick it in between the valve and the rocker, like I said before. You want to make sure that it's straight in there and it's not hanging on anything else. Sometimes it can hang on the engine block or the head or something close to it. And you can see there, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm just going to go ahead and turn this set screw out a little bit to loosen it, because it's real scratchy right now. You don't want to go too much, but you want this to slide back and forth real smooth. You don't want to, if it feels like it's catching and it's kind of scratchy feeling, then it's too tight. So right there is about all I turned it out, maybe a couple thousandths. And I'm going to hold the screw and then pull this back tight. So that's kind of important to hold it, because sometimes the adjuster will want to turn back with the screw if you don't hold it. So now, like I said, I'm on the 10,000ths here, and these should slip in pretty easy. And they slip right in, and I got a nice little bit of drag on it, but it's not too tight or too loose. I'm going to double check this one again. Same thing, nice little bit of drag, but nothing crazy. So we're going to the back. The back is 11 to 13 thousandths, and like I said before, these Hondas, I go to the loose side, so I'm going to go 13 thousandths, and we will do the same thing. We're just going to get on top of it, and this one won't even go in. So let me do this real quick. I'll show you. We'll find out what will go in, and we'll see how far off it is. So I'll start with an 8 to start out. 8 might go in. Now, 8 goes in, but you can barely get 8 in. So you're looking at maybe 7 or 6 thousandths on that, and it's supposed to be 11 to 13. So it's way out of adjustment on the exhaust side, and that's pretty common what I see. Like I said, I do a lot of valves adjustments on these Hondas. That's pretty common for the exhaust to be a lot tighter than usually the intake. Sometimes you don't even have to adjust the intake, even if it's went a couple 100,000 miles. On these, I barely adjust them, maybe thousands or two. But almost always, I've never seen an exhaust that's not tight on these Hondas. So that's what you're going to concentrate on mainly. So anyway, and oh, I forgot to say, this is number 1 cylinder. 2, 3, 4, obviously. So we're going to go to number 1. I'm going to go ahead and adjust those back, and then we'll rotate the crankshaft where we need to, and then we'll hit the next cylinder, which I think would be number 3, I believe. So I'll double check the service date on it. So anyway, I'm going to do the back real quick, the exhaust, and then we'll pick it back up. So we're going to go for number 3 cylinder next, which is this one here. And we're going to rotate the crankshaft pulley 180. And that'll turn these camshafts 90 degrees. So I'll show you the marking after I turn it. So I'm just going to turn it 180 on the crankshaft, which will be 90 on the camshaft. And if I don't know if I mentioned that or not, that's you're going to turn it clockwise. So I'm going to bring you over here. Now your mark that was at the very top now is going to be basically in line with the cylinder head or parallel with the cylinder head. All your marks are just going to move 90 degrees, or a quarter turn basically. So now we're ready to check number 3. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And all I'm going to do now is just kind of show you the next steps. You're basically going to turn it 180, and then you're going to check it. Number 4, then the last cylinder, you turn another 180, and you'll check number 2. And that's how you adjust the valves on it. So I'm going to go through that. I'm going to just go ahead and adjust them real quick. I'm not going to show you how to adjust them again. I'm just going to, every time I turn the crankshaft, I'll show you where the marks are at. And like I said, you are going clockwise. Do not go counterclockwise, or you'll be adjusting the wrong cylinder. So anyway, I'm going to adjust number 3 next, and then we'll pick it back up.
They just now started it.
Alright, 4th one's adjusted. Now we're in the last cylinder. I'm going to change it 180 again, and then we'll hit number 2. And you just turn it over slowly clockwise. 180 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust the 2nd cylinder. So far, all the intakes have been somewhat close. I've adjusted them a little bit, just a tad. And all the exhausts were so tight that I couldn't even get the fuel gauge in there. So that's probably what you're going to find on yours. It's real common on the Hondas again. But anyway, we'll do 2, and then we'll put the valve cover back on. Now, this is a good time to put a new valve cover gasket on. I'm not going to do it because I just put one on last year, I guess, or so. And they are reusable if they're not that old. So anyway, we'll adjust 2, and then slap this back on and start it up. Alright, one thing I'll point out before I put this valve cover away is if you pull out your coil pack and there's a bunch of oil all over it, you can see these are all dry. Then you have bad seals right here, and you want to replace those with your valve cover. They come with the valve cover kit, or they should, but that they'll dry out, and then they'll let oil come out through there. If all your coil packs are wet, or you got one that's real wet, now's the time to change that. So I don't have any of that issue. Like I said, this gas is not that old. I've been in this engine recently for something else, so last year actually. So anyway, look for that. And then if your gas is relatively new, you can reuse it. If not, just get a new one. And go ahead and slap it back on like the way we took it off. Alright, once you get it all back together, it should start up fine. Not hear any loud clattering or anything. Alright, so you should hear it's just nice and smooth. Let me turn it off. It's a maintenance thing. It's not really a waste of time to do it. If you haven't done it at least 100,000, I would go ahead and do it. If you're having misfire issues, you've changed the coil and the fuel ejector and all that, and changed a bunch of parts, you still can't figure it out, there's a good chance in these Hondas that it's the valves. I've seen that before. Quite a bit actually on the V6s. So I've seen cars come to me with brand new coils, injectors, and all kinds of stuff, and they hadn't adjusted valves in 200,000 miles, and they can't figure out why it's not running right. So anyway, that's just something to look at, especially if you get a random misfire, you're chasing it. It's always good to adjust the valves if you haven't done it. It's a maintenance thing. It needs to be done, and it's not a waste of time. So hopefully you learned something from it. You're going to adjust the valves in order. I'll go ahead and post a couple pictures up of the camshaft and crankshaft marks and the torque specs and all that good stuff at the end. So anyway, thanks for watching. As always, God bless.